All right, all you diligent people who come and watch these videos on a regular basis. So today I'm going to do peripheral nervous system. In particular, we're going to look at the motor division. Remember, if you don't remember, I was going to say remember, but if you don't remember, we have our central nervous system, which is the brain plus spinal cord. Sorry, if you hear heavy breathing, that's my dog. She's not too happy. She didn't get to go for her walk. So the central nervous system, and then we have our peripheral nervous system, right? And actually, I should redraw this arrow. So the peripheral nervous system, we have a sensory division. In the sensory division, we have somatic sensory, and we have visceral sensory. Remember, that information goes into the central nervous system. Then the central nervous system processes everything, and the peripheral nervous system has another division. This is the motor division. And in the motor division, we can send messages to somatic motor neurons, and our somatic motor neurons supply to skeletal muscles. And then we have visceral motor neurons. And visceral motor neurons supply to smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and glands. Okay, so in this portion, we're looking at the motor division. So we're going to look at the somatic and the visceral. We're going to compare them. Basically, one, we're going to review where motor neurons are supposed to be found in the spinal cord and the spinal nerves. I'm hoping you already did this, but just in case, you can pause the video now and you can do that all yourself. Like, are you ready? Do you know that? And then what we're going to do is look primarily at the autonomic nervous system, but yes, primarily look at the autonomic nervous system. We want to understand parasympathetic and the sympathetic divisions. We want to know, how are they the same? How are they different? Are their functions the same? Are they different? Are anatomically the same, or are they different? Okay. When we do this, we'll also start to understand this concept of dual innervation, which is that sympathetic and parasympathetic have to actually supply messages to both, parasympathetic and sympathetic both supply messages to the same organ. It's just that you're telling the organ to do opposite things. And then the last part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlay foregut, midgut, and hindgut onto my autonomic nervous system. Okay, so this is probably going to be 3 videos. I think I'm going to cut it into 3 really, hopefully shortened videos. The first one, this first one is you pause here, and I want you to be able to label the parts of the spinal cord and then put all of your cell bodies for the motor neurons in the correct place. Then put all of your sensory cell bodies in the correct place too. Okay, so pause right now and do that. So hopefully you came back after you paused and you did this on your own. And to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to label with colors. So this is going to be my, I was going to do visceral, but I'm going to do, this is going to be my somatic motor. The red stuff is. And then I'm going to do, I don't know, orange, I guess, as visceral motor stuff. And then I usually do blues as sensory, so we're going to do dark blue is going to be our somatic sensory. And I'm going to do a light blue, or you can do purple as visceral sensory. Okay, so why is this important? It's important because this is how we're going to compare the somatic and the visceral motor divisions. So both require neurons to send messages to our effectors. So maybe over here, you want to draw some effectors. Okay, so here I'm going to draw a skeletal muscle. And over here, I'll also draw a skeletal muscle. Just like that. Then I'm also going to draw things that would represent smooth muscle and cardiac muscle. So here I have my heart, and here is my stomach. I know some people like don't understand that, but that's the stomach. So you just do heart and stomach, okay? So on previous videos and in class, I didn't do this in detail, and I'm not going to expect you to know it in detail, but I'm going to kind of fix a couple of problematic things in terms of making our dorsal and our ventral ramus right here. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to do somatic motor. Okay, so somatic motor has to go out to skeletal muscles. We want to understand our cell bodies for somatic motor are right here in our anterior gray horn. We're going to have a cell body that's going to have an axon, and that axon comes out and is in the ventral root. It's going to be part of the spinal cord right there, and it's going to directly supply to our skeletal muscle. So maybe we have another motor neuron, and that motor neuron goes through the ventral root, through the spinal cord, and then comes back towards the back right here, basically. Okay, and if you're like, wait, whoa, what's going on? Just kind of draw a circle like that, just be spinal nerve. Right? And this is going to be my dorsal ramus. So we should understand that this is going to be like our epaxial muscles. And then here we have hypaxial muscles plus appendicular muscles that we're supplying to. So this is one motor neuron. You see how I have a cell body that's going all the way to my skeletal muscle, okay? And now for the visceral motor, we want to remember that the visceral motor cell bodies are found in the lateral gray horn of our spinal cord, okay? What you need to understand is the visceral portion requires two neurons. So what that means is we're going to have a preganglionic and we're going to have a postganglionic neuron. So I'm going to draw off next to our spinal nerve, like not too far away, just a bubble here. And that bubble is going to represent my peripheral nervous system ganglion. Okay, so this is going to be a ganglion. And remember, that's going to be where my cell bodies are. So essentially what I have to do is I have to take one of these visceral motor neurons, go through my spinal cord here. It's going to go through, it's not exactly going to go through the ventral ramus, but for your class, I'm just going to kind of say that yes, it goes through the ventral ramus a bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to stop at this ganglion right there. And then, so that means we're going to synapse here and transfer our message to another cell body. And then that message has to go to our effector, which could either be our heart or our stomach here. So it's two motor neurons. Okay, so two. Where this ganglion is, and then how we create pre-ganglionic and post-ganglionic neurons, how long or how short they are, basically have to do with the different divisions of the autonomic nervous system. So what you can do on here is you can label this as pre-ganglionic neuron. Then we have our post-ganglionic neuron, right? Because our message is going out of the central nervous system towards our effectors. And now you might be saying, okay, so you're going to draw this one that goes posterior, right? Well, technically, there's no organs on the back surface of the body, so you wouldn't really have visceral motor going in the dorsal ramus. Technically, okay? I won't ask you about that question because that's a harder concept that I didn't actually teach you during class. This is just in case you're doing stuff and you start to get confused about how come there's, visceral motor, but there's not really an organ in our back. Then we can finish this off by doing somatic sensory. So in somatics, in sensory, what we're going to see is that we're going to have some cell bodies right about here for both our somatic and our visceral. Remember, that's our ganglion. So we're going to like put that here, and this is our ganglion. Just like that. We're just going to go in an opposite direction, okay? So for somatic sensory, I'm going to draw this little swirly thing here. This is a type of receptor that you would find in the skin. So this is called a lamellar corpuscle. It's a deep pressure receptor. So you could just say receptor if you want to. So what we're going to see is that receptor is going to send our information here through our ventral ramus, through our spinal cord. It's going to hit our cell body here in our ganglion, and then it's going to go to another cell body, which is going to be right here in our posterior gray horn, okay? So yes, on the back surface, so on the dorsal surface, we can also have that receptor that's going to send information through our dorsal ramus, through our spinal nerve, and then through our dorsal root to our cell body in that direction. So here's where it becomes a little bit more complicated. One, I'm going to make these two things like that dorsal ramus, and then I'm going to make this ventral ramus. Okay, so you kind of probably are starting, how come you didn't make this yellow one part of ventral ramus? It's gonna sidestep that ventral ramus, and it's gonna go through something else. That's the reason why. And now you're thinking, okay, so visceral motor or visceral sensory is gonna be like heart and stomach. So like receptors here are gonna send their information through the ventral ramus like this, going through our spinal nerve, hitting our ganglion, and then coming towards more cell bodies that are right here in our posterior gray horn. So here's another weird thing. Since you don't have any organs on the back surface, that's actually not in the dorsal ramus either. But what you should see is that the dorsal ramus is both sensory and motor, and the ventral ramus is both sensory and motor, okay? Just remember, if you cut the dorsal ramus, you cut sensory and motor. If you cut the ventral ramus, you cut sensory and motor, all right? So I hope this kind of at least shows you that you're going to have somatic motor, and when you have somatic motor, this equals 1 neuron. When you have visceral motor, this is 2 neurons. That's what you should get out of this whole entire thing, okay? Understanding that movement and that flow, and we're going to add a little bit more complexity to how stuff is coming out of our spinal nerve, our spinal cord and our spinal nerve, all right? So the next part, we're just going to focus on the autonomic division itself, the visceral motor,